Hi everybody. I'm doing this video for my English class. It's just a little tutorial I have to send in to compilate my essay. If you don't like it, I don't know what to say. Continuing on. Hi, my name is Dominique, also known as Nikki, whichever one you prefer. And today is, reading my English essay and showing you a tutorial of what to do. So the first thing I have to ask is, ever go shopping for something but realize you don't have much money? Then you decide to make the gift instead. I sure have. I know from experience that something looks easy to make but isn't. Well, there is something easy that anyone can do with time, patience, materials, and a simple walkthrough. What is it? Crocheting. With a hook and yarn, anything can be made, from bracelets to sweaters, blankets, scarves, mittens, gloves, socks, blankets, aprons, doll clothes, and even pillows and stuffed animals. As you practice, you'll be able to make what you wanted without the walkthrough. Today, my fellow peers, I'll be showing you how to make bracelets or wristbands, whichever you prefer to call them, by giving you step-by-step instructions and visual tutorial. Yes, I have made plenty as an example of different yarns. So the very first thing we're going to need to make any of these little pretties is yarn. The yarn I am going to be using is a brand called Red Heart. I prefer this brand, but you don't have to do this one. I'm choosing this one because it's mostly black, it does have color in it, and it's my style. You don't have to pick this kind. You can pick any kind you want. Then, before I continue, this yarn, when it's wrapped up like this, it's called a spool. So if I say pull a yarn out of the spool, you'll know what I mean. So the next thing I'm going to choose is a hook. I have a kit full of many different hooks. Different hooks, different sizes. Different sized loops can give you different results. The smaller the loop, the more you will have to make. The bigger the loop, the less you will make, but the more holes there are. I have two personal favorites. The J hook, which is a 5.75 millimeter, and in my essay I ended up writing 6 millimeter. That was my accident. I do apologize. And the second one is the H hook, which is known as a 5 millimeter. Now, we're going to use the 5 because, well, that's what I've been making all of these from. And besides that, it is a good size for the loops. Not too small, but not too large. Nice, tight stitching. And I was also mainly taught how to crochet from these two types of hooks when I was growing up. Now, the last thing we will need is scissors. I could not find my small crocheting ones, so we will use these. Doesn't matter what kind of scissors you use, as long as it can cut through the yarn. But we won't be needing these till the end, or perhaps the middle. I will explain that one later. Now, please also excuse the length of the video. I have no editing skills. But we will try to do the best we can. Now, the next thing we need to do is to begin our project. Now, you're going to want to make sure you pull the yarn from the spool. Keep the spool next to you. I am keeping it on the table because the chair I'm using is too small. When you pull it out, take it about arm's length. So from your hand to the arm, as so. That way you have plenty. What I do is after I do that, I pull it out to about, I would say, 5 times as a starter. You will be pulling more out as you go. And I will also be pointing out the difference between plain yarn and the very lovely multicolored yarn that changes from black to the other color. In this case, purple. Excuse me. So, the first thing we're going to do is after we do this, you're going to take the end of the yarn, put it between your 2 fingers and your thumb. Then, you wrap it around once, and you wrap it around a second time. So, let me redo that so you can see better. So, it crisscrosses, like so. Then you take your hook, hold it like you're holding a pencil. It makes it easier. You go under the first loop, go to the second, and pull through. I messed up. See, I've been doing this for years, and even I still mess up every now and then. Go under this one. Make sure it is under. You grab the bottom, pull it through, and then pull like so, and there you go. You have your first loop. Actually, it's called a magic circle. And the magic circle can be big or small and is used every time to start a project. No substitutions, nothing. If you don't do the magic circle first starting out, you won't get your project done. Now, the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to lower this so you guys can see better. So, I'm going to wrap the yarn. I'm going to use the end to hold the knot. Why? Because for anyone starting off, this sometimes wiggles and moves, like so. And trying to do a loop through is a pain. So you wrap it around once, you grab, and you pull through. Congratulations, that's the first loop. Now, I am going to be doing this to make 29 loops, like I've done with all the other bracelets, or wristbands, whichever you prefer to call them. I'll call them wristbands because they are thicker. Now, the reason why I do 29 is because it fits around my wrist, like so, and leaves room. Why do I need room? Well, how else am I going to slide it on and off? So, I'm going to do 29 stitches. Now, if you're using a different hook or a different yarn, you're going to use something different. If you use thick yarn, then you need to make less loops. Same with bigger needles, or hooks, I mean. If you use thin yarn, ones that are thinner than this kind, or smaller hooks, then you will need to make more loops. This is not an uncommon thing. As I mentioned, different kinds of yarn, different size hooks can make different sizes. And it doesn't necessarily affect. It does and it doesn't. The only difference is you just have to do more or less. Now, I'm going to count to make sure I have enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 23, 24. So I need to make 5 more. Make sure you do count. If you lose track, just go back. Now, what I do to make sure I have enough is I wrap it around my wrist, like so. Connect the end like this, and make sure it'll fit. Make sure it'll fit, but still be stretchy and loose. Also, another tip. Do not make these loops too tight. You need to keep them a little bit loose. If they are too tight, you're going to have a hard time putting your hook through. And that will create problems. So just make it a little bit loose. Loose enough to where you could put your hook through easily, like so. And you will be fine. Now, the next step is how to do the second row. Because congratulations, we finished row number 1. Now, this one is a tiny bit tricky, but not too tricky. So, you're going to make sure the hook is facing the opposite way of where we were going. And the yarn is like this. Now, if the row twisted or curled, that's normal. You're just going to straighten it out as you go. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to loop around once. Next, not the loop that the hook is in, but the one for it, right here. We're going to slip through. Then you're going to wrap and pull. And you wrap one more time and you pull through. And congratulations, you did a half double stitch. I'm going to move the camera down so you can see it one more time because I know seeing it from black is not always nice, considering the yarn is black too. So, around, not the one we just went through, but we go before. Now, make sure you're not going through the same one. Why? Because you will end up creating more stitches, and that would mean your bracelet becomes longer and uneven. And we don't want that. We want to avoid that. So next, pull through, grab the one, pull, so you have 3 loops. 1, 2, 3. Wrap around, pull through all 3 loops. You don't have to pull all through 3 like at the same time. If you have to, like how I have to, you can pull it through one at a time. Tighten it a little, not too much, and you got it. I will show one more time. Wrap, loop, the one without the stitching. Wrap this around, pull it through, 3 stitches. Wrap it once more, take the 4th stitching, pull it through all 3, and you've got it. There you go. Now, you don't have to do a half double stitch. There are many stitches. You can continue doing a single stitch, which just means you do 1 less wrap. Or you could do a full double crochet or a triple. There's many kinds, but I know the double half, or half double, I'm sorry, because that is what my mother taught me. My mother taught me how to crochet when I was 15. And I love spending time with my mom. We had conflicting schedules because high school, her job, her coming home late, homework, always feeling tired between the both of us. We rarely ever did anything together. But one of the things I looked forward to was if I had no plans on a weekend, or it was evening and I was stressed, we would crochet together. While she taught me to crochet, she was making a blanket for me. And apparently the blanket was for when I was a baby, but she never finished it. And, well, surprise, I popped out. So my mother took on and off 18 years to make me the blanket. And when it was finished, she gave it to me on my 18th birthday. I still have the blanket. And I love it nevertheless. Now, when you do this, be careful, because you don't want to split between the yarn like so, because it can mess up. Here, let me re-show you. You do not want it going between like so. Why? Well, it ruins the stitching, makes it more complicated, and with it being thinner, it could break easily. We don't want it to break too easily. Why? Well, we want things to last. They kind of need to last for as long as possible. Now, I'm almost at the end, and I will talk about switching yarn. I won't actually switch yarn. I'd rather keep it one color. But, well, not one color, one spool. But I will talk about switching when it comes time. And this one, if you were to do different colors, I would recommend, if you had 2 solid colors, like I, for example, use 2 solid colors for these 3. Now, if I wanted to make it different, like put these 2 together, make it half and half, so it can be a whole thing, that would be easy. You could do it with multiple. You could do 3 spools, 4 spools, it doesn't matter. There is a difference. I will get to that when I get closer to the end. But for now, I will show what happens with color changing. Now, I'm all the way at the end of the black. You remember the video, how long the black was. Well, I am just about at the end of the black, and it's switching over to purple. This will be much easier for you to see as well. So, as I'm stitching, it suddenly turns purple. Now, this is what I'm talking about with the different colors. Sometimes when yarn is longer, like color is longer, it seems like it'll stay that color for a long time. But remember, with stitchings, we just did a single stitch, and we're doing a half double stitch, which means we're doing 4 loops. And with 4 loops, you use more yarn, so the color shortens. Now, see how I'm crocheting, doing the stitch, and now I got a few purple. Now I can actually show one more time how to do the half double. So you take the one you have, wrap around through the 1 loop, pull it through. So you have 1, 2, 3, wrap around, and yes, you can use your fingers to wrap the yarn around yourself. It can make it easier, just don't get tangled up. After you get the 4th one on, pull it through all 3, tighten a little, and there you go. And you can see how the color blends, how it goes together really well. Blending. Now, I'm close to the end. Again, make sure when you're doing this, you have 29 stitches. Do not forget the end stitch. Otherwise, it will shrink, become shorter and shorter, and it won't look well. I've had this happen. And before I explain that one, let's get to this. I'm at the end. If I were to switch yarns, I would cut this to about here. Then I would take, let's say, part of this hot pink one. I would wrap around and tie it so it would look like this. Well, except tied. You guys get what I mean. It would wrap around and be tied like a knot, so the colors would like contrast each other nicely. And that way it would go from purple to pink after the last loop. Then you would continue on and on. So, after we get the last one through the loop, and making sure you count to make 29, which is not hard, first thing you're going to do is take a look at the ends. See how they line up very nicely? And they do at this end too. This one is going to be a little rounded because of the turn. That's going to be normal. Do not worry about that. As you get longer, it will straighten out to look like this. Perfect. Now, when you rotate, you're going to do the same thing as before. Take the yarn from here and loop it from the inside part under the hook, then over. This way, the stitch becomes neater. If you were to go this way, it would cause the stitch to look longer, like so, and become a little more, in my opinion, tacky. And we don't really want that. So, we're going to, again, pull it under, towards us, then under the body of the hook, but over stitching. Then wrap around once. Now, this is going to be different. You're going to put the hook through the top too. you're going to, you're going to ignore this one completely and go with these top two. Like so. Now, the reason why we're doing the top two is so it stays the same pattern going over and over. Like how we did with this. From bottom to the top. That same pattern. Like that. If we were to do it different, only going through one end, it would constantly switching back and forth, it would make a groove that would go down, up, down, up, down, up. That is called a ribbing effect, or ribbed. Reason why is it represents ribs on the spine. How when some people are a certain size, usually thin enough, you can see the ribs grooving against the body, like a horse's ribs. You could, or a cow's ribs. You could see those animal ribs and how they groove. Alright, so once you get the hook through the two, you're going to wrap around. This is going to be a little tricky because of the way the yarn is. You wrap it like this, going back, over, and then you grab it, pull it through the two. Be careful when you do this. You don't want to go between the yarn again, or only go through one and not the other. So you should have 3 through the 2. Wrap around and pull. The half double crochet again. We are going to continue the half double crochet through the rest of this video. I will show this to you 2 more times because I know how complicated this gets. So, you wrap around, then you go through both the others. If you have to, or you accidentally made the stitching too tight, go through one, hop under, go through again. Wrap around, upward like this, pull through, wrap, and pull. Now you want to tighten the stitches, not too much, still a little loose, but you want to make them a little bit tight to make it look a little neater. I will show once more on the lower cam. Alright, so here's the needle, you wrap. Now, see the 2? When you squish it? 2. You're going to leave this little part alone here, go above it, through the 2. It's already wrapped, the yarn is already wrapping around a hook, pull through. That way you should have 3, like last time. Wrap around and pull. I'm having a hard time pulling all 3 through, so, like through all 3, so 1, 2, 3. And there you go. Now, please take your time with this. You are in absolutely no rush. If you rush, you could mess up. If you're not used to doing this, or this is your first time, I do recommend you go slow. Rushing is not always something you want to do. When you're learning how to swim, you don't immediately jump into the water. Well, not how I learned. You don't immediately go into the ocean. Basically, when you're learning to swim, you don't immediately go into the ocean. No, you start off small. And you go slow. So, excuse me. Back to what I was explaining with the unevenness. if you do too many stitches inside, you will start extending it from straight to out more and more till it goes like that. More, I guess from bottom to top, it would be obtuse. If you were to do not enough stitches, you missed some stitches or you miss the ends, it would go from bottom and going upward, more acute. I've had this happen. I was trying to make my cousin, who was 9 at the time, a apron. Or not an apron, I'm sorry. I was trying to make her a scarf, but I was making it twice as wide because I figured she would fold it in half, wrap it around her to keep her warmer. Well, I was still learning how to crochet. I only learned how to do small things. This was my first big project. I was messing up, and it was going smaller and smaller on the top. And I finally figured out how to even it, but I figured I would make the scarf different. Then I realized I didn't know how to extend it. This was before I learned multiple stitches in the same row. Or, not in the same row, in the same loop. So, I changed my game plan. Instead of making her a scarf, I made her an apron. I did the bottom half blue, top half pink. When I did the straps, I single stitched the yarn through the ends of where I needed to put them before beginning on the straps. So by the end of it, there were 2 yellow straps, one on the left and the right, that you could tie, and then one that looped all the way. Oh, my bad, I made an accident. If you make an accident, you can just undo the loop and redo it. I made the strap around the neck to go all the way around. And I made it really long so she would grow into it. She wore it whenever she cooked or baked with her mom or with me or with my mom. And then she would sometimes clean with it, but she always made sure it stayed nice. She would even play dress up with it, where if she was playing mommy, she would wear the apron. Well, after she was 13, I didn't see it. I thought maybe it got ruined or she got rid of it and did not want to tell me. Well, 2 years ago, no, not really 2, close to about 3 years ago, I went to my aunt's house and was meeting up with another cousin to get my hair done. And I was looking at their younger brother's toy box. And I saw something blue with a touch of pink and yellow. And it was crocheted. I know a crochet pattern anywhere. Sometimes knitting looks the same. I got curious because I knew it was familiar, but I wasn't sure. I asked if that was the same apron I gave Michaela, my cousin. When I was told yes, I started crying. It looked brand new, and I found out since she was too tall for it and too old, she gave it to her younger brother to play with. And I asked if she was there. She was in her room. And I went into her room crying. She thought I was hurt or something, and I pulled her into a hug, crying, saying, "I love you, I can't believe you kept the apron." And she said, "Of course I do, Cousin Nikki, I love you too. I kept it because I knew how important that was to you. And it was important to me because you are my favorite cousin and you made it for me." Well, I cried even more. I cried like a baby. Not one of my best moments. But I was happy. When you make something for someone, you put a lot of effort and love into it. Time, patience. And she, even though she was young, she understood that. And they still have it. Her brother is turning 10 now. He still has it. And apparently she had preserved it. And I believe when he's done with it, they're going to preserve it again for future generations. This keeps me going with crocheting. One of the reasons. That and spending time with my mother. It's something I hope to one day teach my kids. Because, well, I feel that anybody, boy or girl, it is not gender specific. It is a neutral thing that everyone can do, like sewing, cooking, cleaning, sports, and show them. Sometimes handmade things, even if it takes a long time, is often the best. Now, I have a few rows here, and as you count, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the reason why I know it's 4, besides counting, is the way I count it. So you count the bottom, that is thin. If you have a hard time counting which is which, remember the part I told you to leave alone? This part? Well, that tells you a row. So, 1, 2, oops, sorry. Didn't realize the camera wasn't pointing at it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this makes 4 rows. Now, you could stop at 3, like I did with this one, to make it thinner. 4 rows would even be good. But for this, we're going to do 6 to match the thickness of this. And yes, this one was also made from 1 yarn. And the yarn I'm using now was the 3, was this. Well, this is the one that was made from the yarn I'm using now. And I had also done the same thing with this one, where it's got the black, the coral, and like the coral orange and the pink. Also from the same. This is what I meant by the pattern would turn out different. This one was from a different yarn that started off a bluish indigo, purple, and then a touch of pink. I'm not a pink person or girly, but this reminds me of a beautiful sunset. So that's why I like it. Like Twilight. Anyway, continuing on, we're going to make 2 more rows. We are going to keep repeating the double stitch through the whole thing, as not double, half double stitch, as I've mentioned many times. Now, if you drop a stitch, there's 2 ways you could do this. First way is if I had dropped a stitch here on the upper third. Not a problem. I just pull the yarn all the way back and fix it. There's 2 different ways of fixing it if it was lower. I don't remember the one way. The other way I would do it is I would pull it through here. Let's say this is the one. I pull it through here, then I pull it through the bottom of the black, take a different end of the yarn, pull the needle through, tie, that way it ties together. I would try to find the same color, and if not, that's okay, try and find one that's close or blends in with the rest, and it would look like it's fixed. As I mentioned, go slow. Make sure you count this through and look. If you miss a stitch and it's still early on, you could just hold the yarn by undoing the hook, pull it back, and then you can redo it. And yes, that does mean I have to redo this, but that's okay. I would rather have showed you personally than try to explain it, get my words tangled up, and you being confused on it. Yes. And one more thing with the apron story. With the year it is now, she's had that apron for 18 years. And kept it looking brand new, like the day I made it. Okay, so we're going to continue. I'm going to pause this video because there's really no need for me to keep showing you. So let me pause it, and when I come back, I will be finishing up the 6th row. Okay? I will see you in a minute. Yes, one more tip. I'm not at the 6 rows yet. One more tip. When you're doing this, make sure you keep pulling the yarn out. If you pull it out in bigger strands, you have to do it less. Make sure it doesn't tangle. Oh, and look at that. We're going purple and blue with the black. That's going to be very beautiful. I haven't done that one yet. So, I will be back in a minute once I get to the 6th row. Then, I will show you the next steps. Hello again, back again. So, I'm a couple stitches away from the end, but this is what I was talking about, how it's going to be flat. Now that it's longer, you can see it. Plus, I think the blue looks very beautiful. And no, I did not intentionally plan this. Just the way the color spews out. So, once we get to the final ones, now, this is where I made a mistake, and this is a very common mistake. So I'm going to teach you a little tip again. Now, I made this too tight already, so it's hard for me to get in. That's okay. What you're going to do is you're going to take the hook, put it to the very end where you need it, pull up, and wiggle, so it loosens. Then you go through the front, and oh, I already got both of them. Alrighty, so sometimes you can only get the first one in, and then wiggle. I managed to slip 2 in. Wiggle it a little more, then you're going to wrap around and carefully pull through. If you have to wiggle it through, that's fine. Sometimes you don't have to. I didn't have to, but sometimes you do. Now, we're at the end, and you tighten. From what we've counted, we have 6 rows. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I skipped a couple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have 29 stitches in each row. And this is also what I was talking about with the rounded ends. That's normal. Do not worry about that. So, now that we got this, we're going to pick a side that looks prettier. Meaning, less tugs, less mistakes. This one has a couple tug parts from when I was doing demonstrations on how to fix a slip stitch. So, this side is considered the pretty side, the neater. We're going to take it, and from this end to this end, we're going to first wrap it around to show it will form. I'm going to take this hook out. I'm going to pull the loop bigger so I remember. And we're going to loop it like this, to show it would make a good wristband. Yes, I almost said bracelet again. So, once we confirm that, we put the ends together like so, pinch it, and fold. Not too hard, correct? So, we're going to put our hook through that loop and pull it tight. Now, this might seem tricky, but it's super simple. Remember the single stitch we did. So, I'm keeping the camera at this angle because it's going to be a little easier for me to show. Alright, so let's pull it through this loop up here. And this loop here. These two upper ones, like so. We're going to, oh, I forgot to mention this. When you're doing this, make sure this is at the top, or this one's the tail, the one with the end, stays at the bottom, and make sure this stays at the top so it doesn't go in between and ruin the whole thing. So back to this part. You wrap it around. It's going to be a single wrap. Now, sometimes you can't pull it all the way through. That's okay. You can use your fingers, pull it through the first parts. Oops. And that's what I meant by the little stitching part. That's okay. It happens. After that, we pull it through. Oops, oops, oops. I lost it. Alright. There we go. Pull it through. And this is the one that we just pulled through the two loops. Pull it through a single one, pull tight, and there we go. Single stitching. Now you can stitch this as many times as you want. 2 times through the loops, 1 time through the loops, doesn't matter. As long as you get them through the ends and do it once. I will show it again. Alright, pick an end. I'm picking here. Pull it through the 2. Wrap around. Pull it through. Then pull it through one more. Tug it. Because yes, we do need to tighten these this time. And there we go. I will show again. Alright, so here we go. We have this first loop. We're going to put it through these 2, or 4 I should say. Wrap, pull through, and you're going to pull it through, stitch, and there we go. You're going to do this all the way to the very end. Now there are other ways of doing this. There are ways of crocheting this around and round so it just makes a constant circle without having to do this. But that's a little more complicated. It's a little more complicated to do it that way. It's better to do that when you're making hats rather than in bracelets, because you start off with the center and you wrap it around to increase it. My apologies. So this way is better. Now some people don't do the single crochet through. Some people will do a method that's like sewing, where you take it, pull the yarn through each end and crisscross, and you can do that. There's no reason why you can't. I just prefer a single stitch because it makes, excuse me, makes it stronger. Now, we're at the end, and here's our tail. The next step you're going to do is wrap the tail around the hook. Pull it through the loop all the way until the end pokes out. Then you're going to take the two ends and pull. This tightens it. Alright, so you're going to turn it. You're going to over, under to do this, and then pull. Now you have a knot. You could do this twice. I prefer to do it 3 times just to be secure. And there you go. Now, remember how I said you needed scissors? This is why. Because the tail is too long, and this is still connected to the spool. We don't want to walk around with a whole thing of yarn getting caught on everything. That would be a waste of yarn as well. So, we take our scissors. Again, there are crocheting scissors you can use, and even sewing scissors. These were the only ones I could find, because I don't know what happened to my crocheting ones. Now, when you go to cut, be very, very careful. First off, you don't want to cut your fingers. Second, you want to get to a good size. You don't want it too long, because then it will show. You don't want it too long, because it would show. You don't want it too short, because if it somehow unknots, you won't have enough to tie it, and it'll start unraveling. I would go roughly here. That way, it's a clean cut, and basically, as some people would call them bunny ears, I call them butterfly antennas, because they're small like a butterfly's antennas. Now, are we done? No, we're not. First off, you want to clean up your yarn. If you have the extra out, wrap it around. Not too big a deal. It is a little more tough when you do it from here, because you can't shove it back in, but it's easier to wrap it around. Once we do that, no, we're still not done. We can't just leave it like this, because, well, doesn't look nice. Doesn't look neat. So, remember how I told you, pick a side that's the neater side, the less messy, the more pretty side, as I called it, and put it inside? Reason why? Flip it in reverse. Ta-da! Now, here's the back end that we did stitching. You can still tell it's stitched, but not completely. When you do a solid color, like so, it makes it harder to tell. But this is what it would look like. And then when you slide it on, you can either do this end top or the bottom, doesn't matter. Slide it on, and there you go. You have a wristband, or a thick bracelet, whatever you wish to call it. Now, if you wanted to add something to it, you are more than welcome to. There are ways of doing that. First off, you can add an ornament to it. And by doing an ornament, you can crochet something, like an octopus. That one is a lot harder than it looks, but it is worth it. You could do a seashell. You could do a starfish or a seahorse. You could do flowers. And with the flowers, they have an open center, so you could put buttons to make it look nicer. You can do anything that is creatable, like a lightning bolt. That's another example. And you can put it either over this back part to hide it or on the top. And the way you would put it on is either, again, the way some people do it with the stitching, or the single stitch, like we did with this. Not too hard. I feel like I'm forgetting something. So, again, you can make these as long or as short as you want, but I prefer 6 loops. Or, not loops. 6 rows. Just to make it thicker, like a sweatband. Wristband, sweatband. I think they look lovely. It's up to you. So, we got through all that. Now, oh, there is another ornament part I was trying to remember. If you wanted to, like how some blankets have tassels at the end, you could do that with these. That wouldn't be hard. There's different videos and different ways. If you want, I could show you one of these times. But there's kinds where they have the tassels flaring through, or there's another one where it basically whoops around over and over and over. Tassels, I think they're called. Like at the ends of blankets. That's not too hard to do. In fact, before I end this video, I will show an example of some stuff I've made. This oh, I'm sorry guys, hold on a sec. Alright. It's hard to see, but it's a blanket. With the ends. These are the ends I was talking about. There's some of the sea creatures, fish, starfish, seashells, and then there's another one. It's a pillow. A matching one. With this, you can see the shell in the middle and the tassels at the end. And in order for it to be thick like a pillow, I use stuffing. There's different ways of doing this. Many different ways. Some things take longer than others because of the length of it. And if you're especially new to things, well, don't worry about it. Take your time. That's the most important thing to do. Take your time. Do not give up on it. Even if it's tough, try to see it through all the way to the end. If it doesn't look quite right, you can always redo it. But, congratulations! Give yourselves a round of applause or a pat on the shoulder. You just made your very own wristbands out of yarn. Now that this is learned, and it is easy to do simple stitches and beginning steps, you can create anything and form anything with proper instructions and practice. As I just mentioned, it does take time. Bigger projects take longer than smaller projects, but it is worth it. You can make many, many things. If you make these for someone, it shows that you care. And sometimes they can appreciate the work. If they don't appreciate the work, maybe they don't deserve something handmade. Or they just don't understand. This also saves money because it's cheap. A spool of yarn, like the small one I just had, is less than $3 at Walmart. The hook set, I believe, I got it for $17. You can get it any kind. You could get a set of 3, a simpler set. I just got that with the casing so I don't lose the hooks. There's other ones where it's bigger spools. like so. And these ones are more than $6. They're still under $7. The reason why I say these are cheap is because one of these wasn't even a whole thing of yarn. If I were to sell these, let's say $1, and you wanted 50, well, you have $50 plus shipping and handling, or if you're buying it right there and I don't add tax, it's still $50. If you make 50 of them, you're not using as much money. You see, for this, I would say I used roughly 15 cents of yarn. Now, when you make 50 times 15 cents, that's cheaper compared to $50. You just add on more of a price, like I would, due to time and effort. Now, what I love about this is I can also do this while watching TV or listening to music. I can also do this talking to my friends. Or, as pardon me guys, you can see, I am at my boyfriend's house and he's playing a video game and I get to spend time with him while demonstrating this. That's not so bad. There's always a perk to having a little bit of free time. And if you have jittery hands or you're Italian and talk with your hands like I do, keeping your hands busy is really a good thing. So, there you have it. You just learned how to do a wristband. You are more than welcome to pause the video anytime to keep going with these steps, going back. I'm very sorry about the length of this video. Now, I didn't go exactly like my essay because I couldn't read it while doing this. It would have distracted me and made it go longer. But I kept it in the order, and everything I mentioned is in this essay. Almost everything. I added a couple extra because it's a video. Now, if you enjoyed it, this is going to be on YouTube. Hit that like button. This is my very first YouTube video, so I'm sorry if there is something wrong with it. I don't know how to edit. Mind you, I'm not young. Well, I am and not. I'm 28. So some tech stuff is not always great with me. And if you did like this, and you liked the video, thank you. You are more than welcome to leave a comment. I am always willing to hear things. If you didn't like the video, well, kind of sucks to be you. But hopefully you enjoyed it. And to my teacher, I really hope you either enjoyed this or learned something from this. I'm not asking for a good grade, but maybe it's C-worthy. It's up to you. And maybe you could give this a try so you could see how easy it is, or not so easy, depending on what you want to learn. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hopefully I could get more videos up. Of course, I might have to borrow the boyfriend's laptop again. But that's how you make the wristbands, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.